Hello everyone, this is the Thumbs Up channel, and in this video we're going to turn this bathroom into this bathroom. It's a small bathroom but a big project, so let's get started. Day one was demo day, so I got the vanity out and the toilet because the next thing I was going to do is take the tiles off the wall. In order to do this, I got a chisel and a hammer from Harbor Freight. I found that this was the best way to get the tiles off. I applied the chisel at a pretty sharp angle just to get behind the tile and hammer a little bit so the tiles can fall to the floor. I found that this worked out quite smooth. The reason why I was preserving the drywall and actually not replacing the drywall was because I was just going to come back later and put shiplap over the drywall. I wanted to be sure that the drywall was going to be nice and flat for the shiplap to lay on, so I came back with a 5-in-1 tool and leveled some of the chunks. I later came back with a sander to remove any additional debris. Since I was sanding, I went ahead and sanded the tub with a 400 to 600 grit sandpaper to prepare for painting. After sanding, I went ahead and started prepping with tape around all the fixtures that I was going to keep. Following that, I wiped off all the major dust to prepare for primer. The primer I used was a Kills Adhesion Primer. This came as a recommendation to some of the Amazon reviews I saw online, as the epoxy acrylic I'm using as a final coat tends to bubble up. To apply the primer, I used a small roller with a 1/4-inch nap roller sleeve for all the major areas. In the harsh angles, I used a small brush. To paint the tub, I used the Rust-Oleum Tub and Tile Refinishing Kit. This is a 2-part epoxy acrylic formulation that you mix together. Here you will see that this is the base part, followed by the activator part. I highly recommend using a painter's mask and keeping your bathroom well ventilated, as the mixture of these two components together is rather potent. For the epoxy acrylic, I used a small roller again with a 1/4-inch nap roller sleeve. I ended up using several coats of this material to get a proper color. For the flooring, I removed the top layer of vinyl tile with my 5-in-1 tool. I kept the underlayment flooring to use as a waterproof barrier for my peel and stick vinyl tile that I will be applying. Though the tiles are peel and stick, I decided to use a stick and stay adhesive, as this gives me more play when I place the tiles on the floor. The working time of the adhesive is rather long, so you have plenty of time to lay down the tile and space it accordingly. The spacing I wanted between each tile was about 1/4 of an inch, so I used plastic spacers to help with this. These tiles are very thin, so when you have to cut around things like a toilet flange, it's actually quite easy. I ended up using scissors and did some pretty square angles around the toilet flange. While the adhesive was setting, I decided to do some prep work to my drywall. I used this Guards Problem Surface Sealer as a protective barrier to my exposed drywall. I know this may seem a little overkill, as I will be coming back later on and putting shiplap over this, but I figured an additional protective barrier won't hurt anything. I later came back to put some grout between my tiles, and I used this vinyl tile grout to do so. This was a lighter colored gray to provide some contrast. Luckily, not much grout is needed, as these tiles are rather thin, but it is a little tricky, as you have to have the grout set a little bit before you come back with a damp cloth and then a dry cloth to wipe off the excess. For the shiplap, I decided to cut my own shiplap using a cheaper alternative, 4x8 sheets of plywood that were 1/4-inch thick. I used my radial arm saw to rip these boards for a finished width of my shiplap to be about 5 inches wide. I then went back to the bathroom and did some rough estimates to the wall and cut my shiplap to length. I wanted to do some prep work to the shiplap before I applied it to the wall. Each board is going to be about 1/8 of an inch away from each other, so I wanted to paint the inside of each shiplap before I applied it to the wall. I'm using an ultra white semi-gloss latex paint to do this. Since there's going to be 1/8 of an inch gap between each board, I went back to the wall and applied this ultra white latex paint to the wall as well. To continue to prepare the wall for shiplap, I covered up the hole where the medicine cabinet was with drywall, tape, and mud. The next step is really fun, shiplap. The bottom board is very important, and I ended up using shims on the bottom board and making sure everything is all nice and level, as I will be using spacers on the additional shiplap to make sure everything is level going up. When I nailed the shiplap into the wall, I first located the studs and used 18 gauge 1¼ inch nails with my finishing nail gun. Here you can see me tacking the shiplap into the wall while using nickels as spacers between each layer of shiplap. Once you develop a system, this process can be quite fast. Before applying shiplap to the opposing wall, I turned off the main water to the house and removed all the old pipe fittings as I wanted to replace them with new ones. To cut the notches around the pipes, I used an oscillating saw. The new pipe fittings were applied quite easily as I used shark bite, and all you need to do is press them on. The toilet flange was bent quite bad, so I had to replace it. I used my oscillating saw and a hammer and chisel to remove the old toilet flange and then replaced it with a new one. I then applied the same method as I did previously by using nickels as spacers on each shiplap moving up the wall. I also used the oscillating saw here to cut notches to go around the outlets and switches. By this time the drywall mud had dried, so I wanted to put some white behind it because I need to put the additional 2 layers of shiplap. I then applied the first of 2 coats on the shiplap using a ultra white semi-gloss latex paint. I did this by using a roller and back brushed. By this time it had been about a week since I put the grout in, so I used this miracle grout sealer to seal the grout. I did about 2 coats. The process is quite easy as there's a brush at the end of the tube and you just lightly squeeze and go along the grout lines. Now that the flooring was complete, I started bringing things back into the bathroom, beginning with the vanity. Before I put the toilet in place, I figured this would be a great time for me to put the 1/4 round trim in that area. As you can see, I put a very small bead of caulking on the bottom side of this 1/4 round. This is to promote adhesion as well as another added layer of waterproofing. I then came back with my finishing nail gun and tacked the 1/4 round in. I got new bolts for the flange as well as wax seal for the toilet. Once I placed the toilet on top, I rocked it side to side until I got a good fit. Following that, I plugged in the water to the toilet and turned it on, and everything ran okay. The plumbing is really easy. I got the faucet at Costco and put the hoses through the top and tightened it in from the bottom. My sink drainage pipe was pretty flush up against the wall, so I cemented in an extender. Putting the sink drainage pipes in is really easy. Just make sure all the rubber gaskets are in the right area and the rest is just hand tightening. I got a couple of these drainage pipe kits from Lowe's that offer different angles and lengths, and I adjusted it to my particular sink. I used a wrench and some channel locks to tighten up the water hoses to the shark bite fittings. And after the water was turned on and all the fittings were tight, I decided to do a quick little test, and the hose and the drainage worked properly, so I'd give that a thumbs up. I replaced the standard outlet with a GFI outlet on the wall here. I wanted to use a particular GFI outlet with a nightlight, and that's what I found on Amazon. It's a pretty big outlet, but I was able to get it to fit, and of course with the light switches I replaced those old ones with new ones as well. I got the outlet plugged in, so I decided to do a quick little test, turn off the light. The nightlight was working, so I gave that a thumbs up. The next step was to put a couple coats of paint on the wall. We decided to go with a dark gray eggshell paint for this, as it provides great harmony with the light gray vanity, the dark gray flooring, and the white shiplap. Next step was to install the new light fixture we bought, so I put some wall mounts into the wall, screwed the lighting mount in, attached the lighting fixture to that, and then put the light bulbs in. The same process was done with the mirror. I put a wall mount in and just attached the mirror to the screw. Of course you need a toilet paper holder, so a couple screws, some caulking, and an Allen wrench, and you're good to go. Next I went back to where the shiplap met the shower and the walls, and there was a little bit of a gap there, so I used some white caulking just to seal that gap. As you can see here, the color of the door really conflicted with the rest of the bathroom, so I used the same Kills adhesion primer that I used on the tub here on the door, and followed up with the same semi-gloss ultra white paint I used on the shiplap. I then went back to the bathroom and finished the quarter round trim and installed a new vent. When the door was dry, I came back and installed it. As you can see, it now harmonizes very well with the rest of the bathroom. I then installed a brand new black doorknob. The final trim work was done on the top part of the shiplap. I used around a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch trim piece, and it really brought everything together. Well, here it is, the finished result. We're pretty happy with how everything turned out, but let us know what you think in the comment section below. If you think this video deserves a thumbs up, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for any future videos.